The evening light was golden that day, streaming through my kitchen window like a blessing. I stood at the counter, my hands dusted with flour, rolling out dough the way my mother had taught me 50 years ago. The kadai simmered on the stove, his favorite curry, the one with extra ginger and just a hint of jaggery for sweetness. I had been cooking since afternoon. My back ached a little. My fingers moved slower than they used to. But my heart was light. 'Cause tonight, I thought, tonight we would be together again. It had been so long. Too long. Weeks had turned into months, and somehow, without anyone saying it out loud, I had become a guest in my own son's life. A guest who needed an appointment. A reason. Permission. But today, I told myself, today would be different. I wiped my hands on my apron and reached for my phone. My fingers trembled slightly as I scrolled to his name. I smiled at his picture, my boy grown now with the same eyes that used to look up at me with so much trust. I pressed call. It rang once. Twice. 3 times. Hello, Ma. His voice. Just hearing it made something inside me soften. Beta, I said gently, my voice warm with hope. I've made dinner tonight. All your favorites. I thought maybe you and she could come over? It's been so long since we sat together. There was a pause. Not a comfortable one. Not the pause of someone checking their schedule. It was the pause of someone bracing for impact. I heard muffled voices in the background. His voice, quieter now, speaking to someone else. Then her voice, sharp and clear, cutting through the distance between us. Tell her we're busy. My chest tightened. Ma, actually, we have plans tonight, he said, his tone apologetic but distant. Maybe some other time? I swallowed. Nodded even though he couldn't see me. Of course, Beta. Some other time. It's okay. But it wasn't okay. Because just as I was about to say goodbye, I heard her voice again, closer this time, as if she had taken the phone or leaned in on purpose, wanting me to hear every word. You're not invited. 3 words. Just 3 small words. But they hit me like stones thrown at glass. I stood there in my kitchen, surrounded by the smell of spices and love, the table set for 3, and I felt my world tilt. My hand holding the phone went numb. My throat closed. I didn't cry. Not then. I just whispered, "Take care, Beta," and ended the call. For a long time I stood there, staring at the food I had prepared with such hope. The chapatis stacked neatly. The curry still bubbling. The kheer cooling in a glass bowl. All of it for nothing. I turned off the stove, covered the dishes slowly, and sat down at the table. Alone. The silence in that house was so loud, it drowned out everything else. But it wasn't always like this. There was a time, a beautiful golden time, when this house was full of life. When every corner echoed with laughter and warmth. When I didn't have to beg for my son's time. When I wasn't a burden. I close my eyes and I can still see it. The day he got married. Oh, that day. I remember standing at the entrance of our home, my hands shaking as I held the arti thali. The bells rang. The Shania played. And there she was, walking in with flowers in her hair, dressed in red and gold, her eyes downcast, her hands delicate and soft. My son stood beside her, beaming. So proud. So happy. And I was crying. Not tears of sadness. No. These were tears of joy. Of relief. Of a prayer finally answered. I had always wanted a daughter. When my son was born, I had loved him with every fiber of my being. But somewhere deep inside, I had always longed for a daughter too. Someone to share quiet moments with. Someone to pass down my recipes, my stories, my little rituals. And when he told me he was getting married, I thought, finally. Finally, I'll have that daughter, . I welcomed her with everything I had. I performed every ritual with tears streaming down my face. I whispered blessings over her head. I touched her feet to the threshold and prayed that she would bring light into this home. And for a while she did. Those first few months were everything I had dreamed of. She would come into the kitchen in the mornings, still shy, still adjusting. I would make tea for both of us and we would sit together, talking softly while my son got ready for work. I taught her how he liked his tea, strong with just a little sugar. I showed her where I kept the spices, the ones I had collected over decades. I shared my mother's recipes, written in faded ink on yellowing paper. She listened. She smiled. She called me Ma with warmth in her voice. I thought we were building something. A bond. A friendship. A family. I thought I had finally found my daughter. But slowly, so slowly I didn't even notice it happening, things began to change. It started with the smallest things. One morning I came into the kitchen and found everything rearranged. The spice jars I had kept on the left shelf for 30 years were now on the right. The utensils I could find with my eyes closed were in different drawers. I stood there, confused, searching for the ladle I needed. She walked in, drying her hands on a towel. I reorganized, she said brightly. It's more efficient this way. I smiled. Nodded. Oh. Okay. But inside something felt off. This was my kitchen. The kitchen where I had cooked for my husband, for my son, for countless guests and festivals. Everything had a place. A memory. And now it was different. I told myself I was being silly. Sentimental. That she was just trying to help. So I let it go. Then it was the living room. She replaced the curtains I had stitched by hand with store-bought ones. Sleek. Modern. Impersonal. Don't you like them, Ma? She asked when she saw my face. They're lovely, I said. But they weren't. They were just cloth. They had no story. Still, I said nothing. Because I didn't want to be that mother-in-law. The controlling one. The interfering one. I wanted her to feel at home. Even if, slowly, I was starting to feel like a guest. My son noticed nothing. Or maybe he did and chose not to say anything. He was happy. His wife was happy. And wasn't that what mattered? I told myself it was. But late at night, lying alone in my room, I felt a sadness I couldn't name. A quiet, creeping feeling that I was being erased. One small change at a time. The distance between us grew slowly, like a shadow stretching across the floor as the sun sets. At first, I didn't even realize it was happening. She started answering his phone. I would call my son and she would pick up. He's in the shower, Ma. I'll tell him you called. He's at work, Ma. He'll call you back. He's resting, Ma. Can I help you with something? Always polite. Always with a smile in her voice. But he never called back. And slowly I stopped hearing his voice altogether. I would visit unannounced the way mothers do, with a box of homemade sweets or fresh vegetables from the market. I'd knock on the door, excited to see them, to sit and talk and feel like I was still part of their lives. She would open the door, surprised. Oh, Ma. You should have called. I was nearby, I'd say, holding up the box. I brought something for you both. Thank you, Ma. That's so sweet. She'd take the box but wouldn't move aside. We were just about to head out, actually. Maybe next time. Next time. Those two words became a wall between us. I started noticing that I was the last to know about anything. Family gatherings. Dinners with friends. Weekend trips. I'd hear about them later, in passing, through a casual comment or a photo I'd see on his phone when he stopped by for 10 minutes between errands. You went to the hills? I asked once, surprised, looking at a picture of them smiling in front of a waterfall. Yeah, Ma. It was last minute. We thought you'd be too tired for the drive. Tired. That word became her favorite weapon. Don't trouble yourself, Ma. You must be tired. We'll handle it, Ma. You should rest. You don't need to come, Ma. It's too much at your age. At my age. I wasn't old. I was 62. I still walked every morning. I still cooked, cleaned, managed my home. But in her words, I had become fragile. Inconvenient. Someone to be managed, not included. And my son said nothing. He would smile nervously when I looked at him, caught between us, trying to keep everyone happy. But his silence felt like agreement. Like he had chosen a side. And it wasn't mine. She started making decisions without me. Small ones at first. "We're repainting the guest room, Ma." That was my room. The room I stayed in when I visited. "What color?" I asked. "Gray. It'll look modern." I hated gray. It felt cold. Lifeless. But I smiled. "That sounds nice." Then it was bigger things. They were planning a puja at home. I found out 3 days before, and only because I happened to call. "Oh, didn't I tell you, Ma?" She said lightly. "It's just a small thing. Nothing formal." But when I arrived that day, there were 30 people there. Relatives. Friends. Neighbors. Everyone except me had known. I felt like a stranger at my own son's home. And the worst part? He didn't even notice. He greeted me with a distracted hug, his mind elsewhere, his attention on the guests. I sat in a corner, smiling, pretending everything was fine. But inside I was disappearing. Then came the day that shattered everything. It was a Thursday afternoon. I remember because Thursdays used to be special. When my son was young, we'd have lunch together after his school. Even when he grew up, Thursdays always felt like ours. I had spent the morning in the kitchen, making his favorite dessert, kheer with extra cardamom and cashews, the way he loved it. I packed it carefully in a steel container, along with fresh parathas and mango pickle. I didn't call ahead. I wanted to surprise them. When I reached their apartment building, I felt a flutter of excitement in my chest. Maybe today would be different. Maybe today she'd smile and invite me in and we'd sit together like we used to. I climbed the stairs slowly, holding the container close. When I reached their door, I heard voices inside. Laughter. Music. The clinking of glasses. I smiled. They had guests. That was fine. I'd just drop off the food and leave. I knocked. The door opened. She stood there, dressed beautifully, her hair pinned up, a glass of wine in her hand. When she saw me, her smile faltered. "Ma." She didn't move aside. "What are you doing here?" I held up the container, suddenly feeling foolish. "I made kheer. And some parathas." I thought. "We have guests, Ma." I looked past her. The apartment was glowing with candlelight. The table was set with elegant dishes. Friends, her friends, were laughing in the living room, their voices bright and carefree. A dinner party. And I hadn't been invited. "Oh," I said softly. "I didn't know. I'm sorry. I should have called." I held out the container. "Here. You can have this later." She didn't take it. "We already have dessert, Ma. We're fine." I stood there, holding the container like an unwanted gift, feeling my face burn with embarrassment. Can I just say hello to him?" She glanced behind her, then back at me. "He's busy, Ma. This isn't a good time." "I'm his mother." The words came out before I could stop them. Her eyes hardened. And then, in a voice low and cold, she said, "You're not invited." The hallway seemed to tilt. I stared at her, waiting for her to laugh, to say she was joking, to take it back. But she didn't. She just stood there, her hand on the door, her face blank. From inside, I heard my son's laughter. He didn't even know I was there. I don't remember what I said next. I think I just nodded. I turned and walked down the stairs, my legs shaking, my chest tight. I got into my car, placed the container on the passenger seat, and sat there. And then, finally, I let myself break. I cried. Not quietly. Not gracefully. I cried the way you cry when something inside you shatters. When you realize that the people you loved most in the world see you as nothing more than an inconvenience. I cried all the way home. And when I walked into my empty house, I looked at the food I had made with so much love, and I felt something I had never felt before. Not anger. Not sadness. Just exhaustion. I was tired of trying. Tired of hoping. tired of being unwanted. After that day, I stopped. I stopped calling. Stopped visiting. Stopped waiting by the phone, hoping he'd remember me. If I wasn't wanted, I wouldn't force myself into their lives. I had spent years bending, adjusting, swallowing my hurt. For what? To be tolerated? To be pushed aside like old furniture? No. I deserved more than that. So I chose silence. Not out of spite. Not out of revenge. But out of respect. For myself. At first, it was hard. My hands reached for the phone 100 times a day. I thought of things I wanted to tell him. Little things. Silly things. The way I always had. But I stopped myself. Because I realized something. If he wanted to talk to me, he knew where I was. If he wanted to see me, he knew the way. And if he didn't? Then maybe it was time I learned to let go. I started waking up earlier. The house felt too quiet, too full of memories, so I spent my mornings outside. I worked in the garden. I had neglected it for years, too busy trying to stay close to him. But now I poured all that energy into the soil. I planted roses, marigolds, jasmine. I watered them every morning, watching them grow, feeling a strange sense of peace. These plants didn't need me to prove my worth. They just needed care. Consistency. And in return, they bloomed. I joined a prayer group at the temple. Women my age, some widowed, some alone like me. We would sit together in the mornings, chanting softly, finding comfort in routine. I started reading again. Books I had wanted to read for years but never had time for. I called old friends. We met for tea. We talked about our lives, our children, our regrets. And slowly, without realizing it, I began to feel lighter. I wasn't waiting anymore. I wasn't hoping for a call that wouldn't come. I was simply living. And strangely, the less I reached out, the more I noticed his absence. He called once, maybe 2 weeks after I had stopped. Ma. Is everything okay? Yes, Beta. Why? You haven't called. I paused. I've been busy. Oh. Okay. Just wanted to make sure you're fine. I am. There was an awkward silence. Okay. Take care, Ma. You too. I hung up and I didn't cry. I didn't feel angry. I just felt free. Free from the weight of expectation. Free from the pain of rejection. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. But freedom, I realized, doesn't mean the absence of love. It just means you stop letting that love consume you. Weeks passed. Maybe a month. I stopped counting. My days had a rhythm now. Garden in the morning. Temple. Reading. Meals I made just for myself, simple and quiet. I stopped looking at my phone every hour. I stopped imagining what they were doing without me. I stopped breaking my own heart. And then one evening my phone rang. His name flashed on the screen. I hesitated before answering. Hello. Ma. His voice sounded different. Strained. Weak. Beta? What's wrong? I'm not feeling well. He coughed. Fever. Body aches. She's trying, but... He didn't finish the sentence. But I heard everything he didn't say. Do you need me to come? Silence. Then, quietly, almost like a child, would you? I closed my eyes. I'll be there in 20 minutes. When I arrived, she opened the door. Her face was pale. Her hair tied back messily. She looked exhausted. She didn't say anything. She just stepped aside. I walked in. The apartment was dim. The curtains were drawn. It smelled like medicine and worry. He was lying on the couch, wrapped in a thick blanket even though the room was warm. His face was flushed, his eyes half closed. When he saw me, something in his expression softened. Ma. I knelt beside him, placed my hand on his forehead. He was burning. How long have you been like this? 2 days. I looked at her. She stood near the doorway, arms crossed, looking helpless. Do you have ginger? Tulsi leaves? She shook her head. Turmeric. Yes. Bring it. And a pot. I'll make kata. She hesitated, then nodded and disappeared into the kitchen. I turned back to my son. Stroked his hair the way I used to when he was small. You'll be fine, I whispered. And for the first time in months, I saw him relax. I spent the night there. I made him kata, the traditional remedy my mother had taught me, with ginger, tulsi, black pepper, and jaggery. I made him drink it even though he protested that it was too bitter. I soaked a cloth in cool water and placed it on his forehead. I sat beside him, my hand on his, the way I used to during his childhood fevers. He fell asleep around midnight, his breathing steadier, his fever finally breaking. And I stayed. Not because I was needed, but because I wanted to. Around 3 a.m, I heard footsteps. I looked up. She stood in the doorway, watching. She looked small. Vulnerable. You should sleep, Ma, she said softly. I shook my head. I'm fine. She didn't leave. Just stood there, staring at the floor. And then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, I'm sorry. I looked at her. Her eyes were red. Her hands were trembling. I'm sorry, Ma. For everything. I didn't speak. I just listened. I thought I was building our life. Our space. I thought I was doing the right thing. She wiped her eyes. But I didn't realize I was pushing you out. I didn't realize how much he needed you. How much I needed you. A tear slipped down her cheek. I was wrong. For a long moment I just looked at her. This girl. This woman. Who I had once welcomed as a daughter. And I realized she wasn't cruel. She was just scared. Scared of losing control. Scared of being compared. Scared of not being enough. I stood up slowly. Walked over to her. And I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I pulled her into my arms. She collapsed against me, sobbing. It's okay, I whispered, stroking her hair. It's okay, Beta. She cried like a child. And I held her like a mother. Because that's what she needed. Not judgment. Not anger. Just forgiveness. A week later, my phone rang. It was her. Ma. Her voice was soft. Nervous. Yes, Beta. I wanted to ask you something. I waited. Will you come for dinner tonight? Please? I want to cook for you. My chest tightened. You don't have to. I want to, Ma. Please. I closed my eyes. Smiled. I'd love to. That evening, when I arrived at their door, I felt a nervousness I hadn't felt in years. I knocked. The door opened. She stood there, her hands folded in respect. Behind her, my son smiled. Welcome, Ma, she said softly. I stepped inside. The apartment smelled like home. The table was set beautifully. Candles. Fresh flowers. And in the center, my recipe. The curry I had taught her how to make. I made it the way you showed me, she said, her voice trembling with hope. I looked at her. At my son. At the life they had built. And I felt something I hadn't felt in so long. I felt like I belonged. We sat down together. We ate. We talked. We laughed. And in that moment, I understood something profound. Sometimes, love means stepping back. Sometimes, silence speaks louder than words. Sometimes, you have to lose your place to teach others the value of having you there. I had walked away, not out of anger, but out of dignity. And in that space, they learned what I had always known. That a mother's love isn't loud. It doesn't beg. It doesn't demand. It just is. Steady. Quiet. Unshakable. And when you take it for granted, you realize, too late, how cold the world feels without it. Months have passed since that evening. Things are different now. She calls me every few days. Not out of obligation, but because she wants to. My son visits more often. Sometimes alone. Sometimes with her. And when they do, we sit together, not as strangers, not as guests and hosts, but as family. Real family. Built not on blood or duty, but on respect. She asks for my recipes now. She listens when I speak. She includes me in decisions, in plans, in the small joys of everyday life. And I've learned to protect my peace. I love them. Deeply. But I no longer break myself trying to prove it. Because I know now, love that demands your dignity isn't love at all. It's desperation. And I am no longer desperate. Sometimes, late in the evening, I sit in my garden, watching the sun set behind the jasmine vines. I think about that day. The day she said, "You're not invited." And I realize it was the best thing that ever happened to me. 'Cause it taught me something I had forgotten. That I matter. Not because I'm useful. Not because I'm needed. But because I exist. And that is enough. If you're listening to this and you've ever felt unwanted, invisible, or cast aside, know this. Your silence has power. Your absence will be felt. And your peace? Your peace is worth more than any seat at any table. Walk away if you must. Not in anger. Not in bitterness. But in love. Love for yourself. And one day, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one day they'll come looking for you. And when they do, you'll be standing tall. Not waiting. Not begging. Just there. Whole. Strong. Free. And that, my dear, is the sweetest victory of all.